everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Couch Warrior podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mike, and today we're breaking down Road to UFC episode 2. So it's also going to be on Saturday, just like the first episode, and then we're going to have the other 2 episodes on Sunday. I'm hoping to release videos for those, probably not going to happen tomorrow. I'm hoping for Thursday. That's the hope. I'm going to try to release videos then, and yeah, I've already got a bunch of bets down for the first 2 cards and already looking at a few spots. I have a few guys from the Sunday cards parlayed. It's all on my Bet MMA page, and I also post everything on Twitter. So make sure you're checking me out there, and we'll hop right into the card. And we've got 5 fights to talk about, a few guys returning, a bunch of new faces. So let's start it off. Here we've got, and guys, I'm going to do my best with names. I try to practice, but it's difficult with some of these. So for the first fight, we've got Taiyilake Nueraji versus Han Seul Kim. Nueraji, he's 8-1-0. He's don't have his age. He's 6'2" with the 76-inch reach. I'm going to check if I have a different camp for him. I don't, so we're going to be going with Enbo Fight Club. I apologize. And then Kim on the other side, he's 13-4-0. He's 32 years old, 1 inch shorter, going to have about a 2-inch reach disadvantage. And he actually did fight last year. It wasn't a tournament bout, and I don't think this is a tournament bout either, but he looked all right. He was fighting a guy who wasn't very good. And while I think that his striking looked good, I think that his striking defense isn't very good. And I didn't like what I was seeing. I really didn't. That said, he only has 2 knockout losses. One of them was in 2015 to Kadastam, who just knocked out Soldich in 1FC. And the other one was in 2013. So he hasn't been knocked out, but he's been hurt several fights now. I've seen a few of them where he's been hurt, particularly the Road to UFC one. I didn't like it because I didn't like his opponent, and the fact that his opponent was landing a lot on him. I wasn't a huge fan. The striking does look good. He keeps it nice and straight. Good counter game. Output is kind of ass, though. His wrestling looks pretty good when he's using it, but he rarely uses it. Takedown defense, pretty solid. I'll give him that. And then his jiu-jitsu, it looked really good in his last fight. The Road to UFC fight. And it's kind of hard to read how good it was because the opponent is just not a good grappler. The guy he submitted is not a good grappler and didn't know how to defend a lot of the things that Kim was throwing at him. But his transitions looked pretty slick. I'm an untrained eye when it comes to jiu-jitsu. I just know what I know from watching and taping fights now about 3 years. But to me, it looked pretty good. Now, on the Taiyilake side, there's a few things I like, a few things I don't like. First off, he's actually 20 years old. Took me some work to figure it out, but I found it. He's 20 years old. He's going to be 12 years younger here. Now, his striking is pretty good. Nice jab. He keeps it straight. Pretty decent output. I would also like his output to be a bit better. And I like his clinch game a lot. He's nasty in the clinch. Like, he'll do it against the fence. He'll do it in the middle of the middle of the cage. Doesn't matter. And once he gets a hold of his opponent's necks, he's just throwing these nasty knees to the head and to the body. And honestly, I think he's pretty live to knock out Kim here. He's not the biggest power puncher, but once he gets into that clinch, deadly. And I do think he can knock out Kim there. I think it's going to be a really close fight. Now, Taiyilake does have one other weapon. He wrestles a lot. He'll wrestle in almost every single fight he has. Not always the best setups for it, but he does seem to have good wrestling. Seems to be getting better and better. He's only 20 years old. And 20 years old with how many fights? 9. So he's been fighting it since a pretty young age. Improving every fight. You can see it in the tape. My one issue here is I would bet him. I do want to back him as a dog. I'm very interested. But I don't know just how good Kim's takedown defense is. I didn't get to see it tested too much. So I don't really know. And on the feet, I think it's very close. At range, I favor Kim. But once we get a little bit closer, I think it's going to be Taiyilake who's going to be more dangerous. So it's a difficult fight for me to get a good read on just because of the lack of good information. There's a bunch of information, but it's hard to tell. Taiyilake hasn't fought the best competition, neither has Kim. But I'd say that Kim has had the better opponents. Honestly, probably by a decent margin if we look at it. So John Adejar, not that great. Let's see. Yeah, honestly, the only good fights he's really had are the ones he's lost. And Taiyilake also hasn't fought anybody at all. He did lose to Mending with the liver kick. I could not find that fight, unfortunately. So don't really know how it played out. I'll say this. My original lean was Kim. I think I'm going to change my pick, though. I think my official pick is going to be Taiyilake. Now, whether I get to a bet with him, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to have to keep looking at the line. Right now, he's plus 145. I would like something a little bit better for a relatively unknown fighter. And Kim's not bad at all. Kim is pretty good. And he could very well just outwork Taiyilake here. But the more I think about it and the more I think about what I've seen, I think between the grappling, the clinch game, and then also being a pretty good striker, I think Taiyilake is actually pretty live. So I'm gonna make the official pick Taiyilake. There's no bet here, not yet. If I do make it, it'll be on the underdog probably, and it's gonna be on my Twitter when I make it. Moving on, we've got Jiniushiyue versus Billy Pasulatan. Now I'm gonna call him Jin. Jin is 11-2-0. He's 5'8" with a 69-inch reach, training out of Enbo as well. Let me just double check that. We are at flyweight, so 5'8". He's pretty big for this weight class. Yeah, I don't have a different gym. We're going with Enbo. And then on the Pasulatan side, he's 10-2-0, 5'6", so he's 2 inches shorter, training out of Synergy MMA. So the line's been back and forth. G was a favorite, then Billy became a favorite, then G's a favorite again now. I caught G at minus 115, and I put a half unit on it. Now, I'd put more, but I'll explain why I didn't. We've only got one fight available on Jin, unless you've got like crazy skills or connections, because I've done my best, and I check every site possible. I have my little tricks up my sleeves to find a few more fights than other people might, but for him, my tricks didn't work. Only one fight, and he looked great. The opponent wasn't great, but he looked very good to me. I liked his striking, I liked his grappling, and after watching Billy, what I see is two very similar fighters, but I think that Jin is going to be a little bit better. Now, we're working with the Chinese regional scene and the Indonesian regional scene. I don't think highly of either, but I personally rate the Chinese regional scene a little bit more highly. I don't love what I've seen in the Indonesian regionals. I don't love the fighters that we've seen come out of there. So I'm not a huge fan or believer, and I got to give the edge a little bit to Jin in terms of competition, just based off of that. Now, Billy, he's an all right striker. His striking is it like literally on my notes. I wrote all right. He's good. That's about it. He's got good wrestling. I'll give him that. It seems like he likes to wrestle a lot. 5 submission wins. He's a good grappler. But like, it looks good against crappy competition, right? Now, with Jin, I haven't seen his takedown defense tested too much again because I'm working with one fight. I do remember that he did have a takedown attempted against him, unless I'm incorrect, but I'm pretty sure. Did look good, kept it on the feet. Now, his own wrestling, also very solid. And I haven't really seen Billy's takedown defense tested all that much, but I think that G, just watching it, and I might be untrained with jiu-jitsu, but I know a decent amount about wrestling. That's something I have done. And to me, just in my eyes, I think Jin is the better wrestler. And I also think he's the better striker. So because I think both of those things, I have to think that Jin's going to win this fight. Again, working with very little info, one fight. So I kept it to a half unit, even though even off that one fight, I'm fairly confident Jin's going to win this. But hey, Billy's exciting. He's explosive. He's got some nice knockouts. I think one of his knockouts was like a flying liver kick or something. I don't think it's going to happen against Jin, but I'd be very cautious playing either side, really. But I like Jin to win here. I think it's a close fight in terms of just styles. They seem very similar, but I think that Jin is just a bit better at each thing. So Jin is going to be the pick, and we're going to move on to our next fight. All right, so next up, we've got Kouya Kanda versus Yibugele. And all right, so Kanda's 11-4-0, 27 years old. He's 5'11", training out of Paraisha Kashiwa. Let me double check my notes. I don't have anything otherwise. Yibugele, 22, 11-1. Don't have his age. He's 2 inches shorter, 70-inch reach, Dragon Gym for him. Now, Yibugele is a strange story. I mean, so you look at his record, right? And he's got, 34 fights? 20 of them, 20 of those fights happened since 2020. I'll repeat it. Since 2020, 3 years ago, he's had 20 fights. 20. So, again, I'm not a math person. 20 divided by 3. That's just about 6 fights, right? Just over 6 fights a year on average. And that's a lot. He's fighting a lot. He's fighting a lot more often than Kanda. But, like, I don't know what to make of it. He's fighting pretty trash guys. Is he going to get better? I mean, you have to assume over 20 fights he's going to keep improving. But even the more recent ones, I don't see anything amazing about him. He does have 10 knockout wins. I could see some power, but I think his striking is just pretty good. Nothing too crazy. Output could definitely be better. I don't like the output, and I think he's really hittable. Now, his defensive grappling, again, I haven't seen it tested much recently, but in 2020 against Balajan, another guy who fought on the road to UFC last year, he got dominated on the ground, just completely out-grappled, lost that fight. And I do think Kanda has what it takes here to out-grapple him as well. He's going to be taller, lankier. He's fought the better competition. If I'm not mistaken, he's fought in ONE FC. That doesn't seem so on here. I thought I remembered it, but regardless, I think he's just going to be a little bit better. I do think he's got to be wary in the striking. He's got a little bit of a tall man's defense. He has been knocked out twice, but at range, I think he's going to find more success just because he's lankier, taller, longer. I think I give the striking edge to Yibugele, but I think it's very close. But the wrestling, I give solidly to Kanda. I think Kanda's a great grappler. I like what I see. He's not getting any subs, never submitted anybody, but I think that he can use the wrestling here. So between his striking and his wrestling, particularly the wrestling, I think that Kanda's going to grind out a decision. That's how I see this playing out. Now, I played Kanda at minus 146 for 1 unit just because of that grappling edge, and I don't think he's going to be out of place on the feet at all. I just think he has to be very careful because he can be knocked out. But Yibugele has been knocked out 3 times as well. So neither guy's, got the best chin in the world, but I think that Kanda, as long as he doesn't get sparked, should win this fight. I personally think it's going to be a decision, but didn't want to bet any methods. We did get props, which is dope, and I have a few for the fights that are coming. But for this one, I don't have any props, and yeah, the pick is going to be Kanda, and we're just going to move on. So let me double check who we have next. So I stand corrected. I actually don't have any props on these fights. I bet props on the first Saturday card that I broke down yesterday. I didn't have props yesterday, so I'll give those out at the end of this video. But we're going to move on to the next fight. Let me turn on my AC. Getting a little hot in here. All right, so next up, we've got Sumit Kumar versus Seung Choi. Kumar, he's 4-0, 22 years old. He's training out of Team Alpha Male. Uriah Faber's calling him a future champion. Weird. And then Choi, 6-2-0, 26 years old, 5'6" with a 64-inch reach. So he's 4 years older. And from what I see, I do think he's going to be bigger. Now, I had Choi as an underdog against, I just flashed it for a second, Park. This was in the finals of the road to UFC last year. He won his 2 fights before then against Kaiwen, Dana White's Contender Series alumni, and Rama Subandi, who I don't think is very good. But against Park, he was winning that fight. Wasn't the most impressive performance ever, but he was winning in my opinion. And then he was winning on the feet, which I didn't really expect. I thought he would have to wrestle there, even though Park was also a good wrestler. But he was winning on the feet, and then just poor fight IQ. He went for the grappling, and he gets submitted. Now, do I think Kumar is good enough to submit him? I don't know. He's 22 years old, so he's going to be rapidly improving. I know he spent time at Team Alpha Male, like I said, but I actually have him at Tiger Muay Thai now, so it's probably a good thing. His record couldn't be more suspect. Out of his 4, so he has 4 fights, right? There's really 7. But 3 of those were marked as ineligible. 1 in 2021, 2 in 2020 for various reasons. 2 of them were because of the promotion. And then 1 of them, I think, was just because of the particular matchup. But I guess he was getting complete just bums. And Tapology picked up on it and said, no dice. So he's only got 4 official wins, even though technically he's won 7 fights. 4 official ones. And the guys he's won, I mean, you look at it, not one of them Not one of them has a winning record, and not one of them has fought more than 3 times. So while he shows a lot of raw talent, he shows very solid wrestling in my opinion, but it's taking down cans and like I don't think he can hold Choi down. Maybe he can take him down, but Choi, he's got an 84% takedown defense. He's very good there. Training under Korean Zombie, he's going to have a good ground game. And I think he's going to be able to keep it on the feet and grapple himself if he wants to. I haven't seen Kumar's takedown defense tested yet, but I do know that Choi's a good wrestler. Now, in terms of the striking, Kumar, he's got big power, but he's pretty hooky with his strikes. I'm not seeing a lot of stuff straight down the pipe. Could he flash knockout Choi? It's possible. Hasn't happened to Choi yet, but he does have power. I don't think it's going to happen. I like Choi's striking. I really wish his output would be better. If it gets better, if he improves with that output, if he throws more, I think he's going to become very difficult to beat because he's also got good wrestling and great takedown defense to keep the fight on the feet. So I need some output improvement from Choi, but overall, I have to think that Choi wins this fight. Now, minus 500 seems a little steep. I parlayed him with a bunch of other favorites earlier today, and I'm starting to get a little bit of buyer's remorse, so I'm going to tell my viewers not to parlay him. I'm going to set up a few other parlays with the people I have him with without him. Going to see what else I'm working with in the other 2 cards, and then I'll work it out. Again, post it on my Bet MMA page. You can find it under Couch Warrior Pod. So I think Choi wins, I guess by decision, but Kumar, don't believe he's ever been out of the first round. It doesn't say the rounds here, but almost positive he hasn't. And I just don't know how he's going to look as he gets extended. I think he's going to look good for like a minute or 2, and that's about it. So I think Choi's going to win the fight. I think Choi probably wins by decision, but again, could be a late finish because Kumar, we don't know. Does he have cardio for 2-3 rounds? Hard to tell. So give me Choi here, minus 500, a little rough. His decision prop is plus 105. I don't hate it. He's a bit of a decision machine, but we're talking about a guy again in Kumar who's so untested, who's such a big question mark. And because of that, I'm going to go with Choi. I think he's going to win. And yeah, I'm not going to keep repeating myself. We'll move on to the final fight. So this one here, we've got Kaiwen Li versus Kai Lu. Li, he's 10-5-0, 27 years old. He's 5'9" with a 69-inch reach. And I had to do a ton of digging. Now, both of these guys have been at Team Alpha Male at some point. It's Kai Lu, who was there more recently. He was there in February. But for Li, I had to dig and dig and dig. I had to find his main training partner and then look at where his main training partner was training and match up if the gym pictures matched up with his gym pictures. And I think I got it right. It looks like he's training at Dethrone MMA and doing some work at Fresno Training Center. And then also a little over 2 months ago, it looked like he was at the UFC PI with an interesting group. He was with Cody Garbrandt. He was with Marvin Vittori, and he was with Frankie Edgar. I don't know if he was training with them, got a picture with them. I don't know what the deal was there, but that's the information I have. Now, the thing with Li is he's very inactive. His last fight was in 2021 against Fabricio de Andrade in 1FC. Andrade is now the current 1FC featherweight champion. Li did get knocked out by him, but in my opinion, he was winning that fight up until about a minute before he got knocked out. So he got knocked out, I think, in the end of the first round, and I felt that he won the first 3 minutes. His wrestling looked pretty good, even though he couldn't hold Andrade down. Andrade does have good takedown defense and a good get-up game. I do know that about Andrade. His wrestling looked good, and his striking looked good in that fight too. My issue, though, is, again, it's a little bit loopy, and he can get way overexcited to find that finish. I mean, the guy's young. He's 27. He's not that young. He's only 1 year younger. I say he's young because I'm thinking back to his fights, and before 2021, we only have 2019 tape. So he was like 22 there, and he looked young because the way he was fighting. He'd get close to the finish and then kind of blow his load. And then he had, like in the fight that went to the 3rd round, I'm blanking on the opponent's name. I'll tell you. It was Paul Lumi. He knocked him out in the 3rd round, but he had to pretty much take the 2nd round off because he had to come back with that cardio because he went for the finish in the 1st round, didn't get it. And I didn't love what I saw. He was getting hit a lot. And as the fight went on, it wasn't so clear that he was like dominating or even winning. He did get the finish in the third round. I do think it was a fight he would have won even if it did go to a decision, but against a guy like that wasn't the best look. But again, that was over 3 years ago. Against Andrade, he looked much improved, but we're only working with 4 minutes of tape since 2019. So it's tough. On the Lu Kai side, I have him at Team Alpha Male, and then more recently, he seems to be training in China. I can't tell you what gym. He did fight on the road to UFC last year. He had 2 fights. He won the first one against Anga Hans, and then he lost to Lee, who ended up winning the whole tournament. So the Lee knockout, he looked all right at first, and then Lee just started touching him up a little bit, sat him down, and then they got back in the center, and then Lee just put him out with a few more punches. In his Anga Hans fight, Anga Hans, in my opinion, isn't the best fighter ever. He's okay. Now, he tried to take Lou down 4 times, didn't get a single one. And I don't normally say, it doesn't mean much because Anga Hans isn't that great. But first of all, Anga Hans, that's his thing, is wrestling. And second of all, just watching him, he does all the right things. He sprawls well, underhooks, uses his hips. And even on the regionals, he's had great takedown defense. So while Lee does have good wrestling, I don't know that that's going to be a path here against Kai Lu. We're going to have to wait and see. Kai Lu does have a loss against, what's his name? Kanman De, something like that. And the guy's 38 now. He was 36 in that fight. Excuse me. But the dude completely out-grappled Kai. That's pretty much what happened. He out-grappled him and won a decision. Can Lee do that? I don't have any tape that suggests to me that the answer is yes. I think he has good wrestling, but I don't think he can do that. So then the question is, can he knock out Kai Lu? Yeah, I think he could knock out Kai Lu. I think that's a very possible thing that happens here. Kai's only been knocked out once. That was against Lee in his last fight, and he's taken about a year off now. So, his chin has looked good, but even on the regionals, he's been getting touched up a little bit more than I'd like. And against Anga Hans, also, Hans is mostly a wrestler, and he was landing a few too many strikes on Kai than I would have liked. My thing here is that I think that Lee is just the guy with better skills overall. I think he has a higher ceiling, and if during this time off he's been just training, I think that he might come back and look even better than he did in the Andrade fight. I thought he looked great, all things considered. Again, Andrade is a beast, and he's the current champion in ONE FC, featherweight champion, and he's a very good fighter. So I think that Lee has the higher ceiling. I think he should win this. I think he's going to win this, right? But I'm having a hard time seeing him win a decision because I'm not really seeing that happen in his fights very often. He has decision wins, but it's usually by knockout. And as the fight goes on, I think it might be Lu Kai who starts to find more success. Kai Lu, sorry, I keep going back and forth. I'll call him just Kai. I think he might take over as the fight goes on because, again, Lee kind of has a tendency to slow down, go a little too hard in the first round. If he hasn't fixed that, Lu could also out-wrestle him. Lee, I have seen him taken down. His takedown defense is all right. His get-up game is good, but he could get taken down here. And as the fight goes on, I wouldn't be shocked if Kai took over and grounded him out for a decision. I'm going to stick with Kaiwen Li as my pick. I think he's going to get it done by knockout. I think he's going to knock out Kai Lu for Kai Lu's second knockout loss in a row. But I don't think he's playable as a favorite. I don't, because there's just not enough info on how he's going to look in this fight if it extends, and not enough info on how he's going to look if he's getting wrestled a lot, which Kai could do. And I think Kai will do because Kai's striking is good, but it's meat and potatoes. It's nothing special. And I personally think that Kaiwen Li will be winning the striking exchanges. So I'll give the wrestling to Lu Kai. I'll give the striking to Kaiwen Li. And then in terms of competition, other than Andrade, it's pretty close. So I might even give it to Lu Kai because he fought in Road to FC. But that's kind of a toss-up. So striking, Kaiwen Li. Wrestling, Lu Kai. I think Kaiwen Li wins by knockout, but I think you should probably stay off of him just because I think Lukai winning by decision isn't very unlikely either if he gets out of that first round. So again, pick is Kaiwen Li. No bet here. The knockout prop, I don't think it's tempting enough against Kai Lu because, again, Kai hasn't been knocked out only that one time against Lee. Other than that, he hasn't been knocked out. So at minus 105, I'm looking at it now. I don't like that knockout prop, so I'm going to stay off of it. I don't hate anybody taking Kai as the underdog, but I would have liked a better price than plus 145 for it. So for me, it's a pass, but I think Kaiwen Li wins the fight. And that's it, guys. That's 5 fights. Gave you guys out my picks and any bets I've made. And now I'm going to give you my props for the fights I broke down yesterday for the first episode of the Road to UFC that happens on Saturday. And what I played was I played Mark Klamako's opponent, Junghyun Lee. I played him inside the distance at plus 550 for just 0.2 units to win over 1 unit. And I broke it down in my video yesterday. I'll give a quick thing here. I think that Klamako should win. I think his wrestling will get it done. But I think that Lee, as a 20-year-old, as somebody who I think is pretty good, who I think striking-wise might be the better striker. I think it might be close. I know people rate Klamako striking very highly. I don't think it's anything insane, and I think his opponent Lee's very live to catch him on the feet, similar to, Klamako got knocked out by my guy, what's his name? Now I'm blanking. I have to look it up or I'm going to go crazy. Yuma Horiyuchi. Didn't even have to look it up. Got knocked out by Yuma. My guy Yuma Horiyuchi also competed in the Road to UFC last year. Not the most powerful striker, so not the best look to get knocked out by him. So I think Lee, inside the distance at plus 550, is a decent shot. Sprinkle, because Klamako should win that. But I think Lee's a decent sprinkle, and I don't think you should parlay Klamako. Now, the next prop was Jia by decision at plus 265. I understand a lot of people think he'll just get the sub. He's got 11 submission wins. His opponent's been subbed 4 times, but his opponent, I believe, off the top of my head, I think it was 14 submission wins himself. So also a good grappler, and watching his opponent's tape, I think I've been able to find a few more videos than others. He's a good wrestler. He's not the best striker, but he's a good wrestler. He's big, lanky. So I think that because they're both wrestle-heavy fighters, I think we very well just might see a grappling match for 15 rounds. I do think Jia will be dominant. I think he won his fight in the finals. I had a nice underdog ticket on him. Should have cashed it. Didn't get it because the judges valued the damage more than the control. But I think he's going to get that control again here. And could he get the finish? Yeah, he can. His opponent isn't as good as him. He's going to be the better striker. He can maybe even knock him out. But I think that at plus 265, it's worth taking a shot on that decision prop in a fight where I think we're going to see a ton of grappling, and with a guy in Jia where he's shown that he's just going to wrestle. And if he can get the finish, that's good. And if not, he'll get his decision. So I like that prop for Jia, the plus 265, just 0.4 units because I recognize he can get the finish. And then the last one, it's pretty square. The line is getting beat up still. I took Taiyilake inside the distance, minus 275. I put literally whatever I could on it. I think it's an incredible bet, even at minus 300. I know it's crazy to say. I don't want to pick a method of how he wins, even though I think it's going to be a sub, because I think he can get either one. He's got 3 sub wins, 3 sub knockouts. But Taiyilake, guys, I think he's going to fly. I think he's going to fly through his opponent. It's just such a perfect matchup. So that ITD prop, I went pretty crazy with it, and even at chalk, I think it's a good spot. So that's it for me, guys. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be doing my best to put out the next 2 episodes for Road to UFC probably Thursday. And good luck, guys, with any bets you have this weekend, and peace out.